All right, what's up? Welcome back to another Q&A. This is Q&A number 9. We're going to be answering some of the questions you guys have for us. Remember, if you want to get something in here, we love taking questions from our viewers. You can do that by DMing us on Twitter or just responding to some of our tweets. You can leave comments for our YouTube videos or find us on Instagram, really anywhere. We try to aggregate those questions. We pick some of the most interesting ones and we put them on here. So we've got a loaded week for you, so let's just get right into it. Number one here says, reason not to trade Matz. Maybe with as bad as JoJo's been struggling, we need to try Matz as a left-handed setup option. So this is interesting. I don't know. I haven't thought about this. I'll be completely honest. This is definitely an interesting idea. I think there are a few problems with it. Number one, Steven Matz is a very expensive reliever. He's being paid $11 million. And I'm just not sure that's worth a guy who might be a good lefty setup reliever, a guy who might not even be your eighth inning guy. He's definitely not going to close games for you. That's a lot of money right there. And if you can offload that, I'd much rather do that than be paying that for a bullpen arm. He also might block some interesting arms in the Cardinals system. They definitely have guys that deserve spots in the bullpen. Maybe Matz is a better option than those guys, but those guys could do it for free almost. Matz can't. So those are two issues right off the bat. Let's talk about the JoJo Romero angle of this, though. So obviously, JoJo has struggled as of late, but he still had a really strong year overall. JoJo this year, a 3.36 ERA, which is actually better than he was last year when everyone was talking about him breaking out. The FIP's not as good as it was last year. It's a big red flag, but the ERA plus is still very good. 126. He's 26% above league average. His strikeout rate, unfortunately, is way down, but it's not like his walk rate has jumped. He's had some bad homer luck, which he was incredibly lucky at not surrendering home runs last year. You'd like to see the strikeout rate get back up a bit. It's 7.8 per 9. I don't have his percentage here, but it's not great. 51 strikeouts in 59 innings, a far cry from the 42 in 36 and change he posted last year. But he's been good, I'm not sure what this narrative about JoJo having this big collapse is. He's regressed. He's regressed more towards the player he is. He's probably not a 2.1 ERA guy. He's a good reliever. He's a very good reliever that would slot into any bullpen in baseball. He would make anybody better. But he's not one of the most elite arms in the National League, and that shouldn't surprise anybody. Yeah, he hasn't been great. I do think he deserves the job moving forward. And I just want to say, too, I'm not sure there's a ton that really convinces me that Steven Matz is going to be an incredible reliever if you plug him in. I know that in his brief time as a reliever last year, he was fairly good, but he's been really bad this year. 43 innings. He's got a 5.19 ERA. I know a lot of that came in games started at the beginning of the season where he was really struggling, but the strikeout rate is way down. The walk rate is up. It's actually the second highest of his career, which is terrible. Like usual, he has struggles with home runs. These are not things that you really want out of a reliever. I'm just not sure what kind of bullpen value Matz has at this point. And I think that's something that you need to monitor if you're going to consider this. Next up here, what are your thoughts on a Gorman for Reid Detmers trade? I'm pretty conservative when I talk about trades. Maybe that's not true. I like to think that I am. But I'll say this is one where I feel like both teams have more reason to say no than they do to say yes. So obviously Gorman still has a lot of potential. He could still be a 40-homer second baseman, and that's a special power. It's a great tool. Unfortunately, this year, the contact rates just fell off a cliff. He was terrible. It was really hard to watch at times, but there's stuff to still really like about him. When Gorman makes contact, he still does a ton of damage. He just needs to not fall into the Joey Gallo trap of just becoming, a shell of his former self and allowing a gazillion strikeouts. That's just not going to work. So, yeah, he needs to not be Joey Gallo. Unfortunately, though, you don't really know what you're getting from him anymore. It's really hard to project him to have a strong year next year. I thought he was going to be a perennial all-star. He had encouraging signs when he first came up, had a great 2023. Felt like he was going to build on that going into this year, had a solid enough first few months, buoyed by some hot stretches. And then really just the wheels came off. It was hard to watch at times, on the whole, really bad. So I'm not sure how much value he has. And then for Detmers is the Angels' favorite young starter. And there's a reason for that. Reid Detmers is very good. He's had some problems. Pulling up some of his numbers from this year just to have a more accurate understanding. He was very bad this year. And that's tough. He got sent down. Definitely wasn't the season the Angels wanted him to have. So this says 6.70 ERA and 87 innings. Not good. It's similar to Gorman, where he's kind of a reclamation project because he was a league average pitcher last year and he was above league average in 2022 in 25 games started. He's also really, really young. The Angels brought him up in 2021 at just 21 years of age. He's only 24. He still has multiple years of club control left. I'm just not sure the Angels trade an arm like this. A lot of people still really believe in him. They think the tools are there. There's a lot to still like about Reid Detmers. I think for the Angels, they need pitching. They haven't had a ton of problems bringing in hitting or at least developing some offensive power. They have really struggled with pitching for the last few years, actually the last decade. And if you're the Angels and you trade away Reid Detmers and he goes on to be really good, that's probably not worth bringing in a Nolan Gorman. And for the Cardinals, I think it's pretty similar. If you give up Nolan Gorman, a guy who a lot of people saw as an answer for a team that was really trending towards not being good and maybe trending there again, and Reid Detmers stinks, that's just not going to sit well with the fans. The Cardinals know that they really have to be careful about trades they make moving forward. A lot haven't worked out in recent years, and it's resulted in a lot of animosity from the fan base. That's fair. So yeah, I think there's definitely concern here. I don't know if either team pulls the trigger to get this done. I think if it happened, I would, if it was straight up, I'd probably grade it as a C minus maybe. I just don't know if I'd be that excited either about Detmers coming over. There's reason to believe in him. But at the same time, you'd think Gorman would get you a better arm. Obviously, this year notwithstanding, he would have gotten you a really good arm for the future. I know there was talk about trading with the Mariners for one of their young pitchers. So I don't know. I would be disappointed if it was Detmers, and I think Angels fans would be disappointed if Detmers yielded Gorman. So next up, why do we assume Scott will get close to Siani's level defensively? Siani has the instincts that Scott just doesn't have. His reaction, 0.3, and route, -0.2 rankings are well below league average. Interesting. But we assume he'll eventually become elite defensively solely because of his speed. There's a lot to unpack here. So it's unfair to compare anybody to Michael Siani. Siani is probably the best defensive center fielder in baseball. I hope he wins the Gold Glove. He has way less innings than everybody else and is still right at the top of the leaderboard in lots of counting stats, including outs above average. He's been unbelievable this year. There's really no more I can say about him. He's been amazing. I'm trying to get some of his baseball savant numbers, but I mean, really, he's on a per innings basis, he's the best. Now, Victor Scott, there are reasons to like him. Scouts loved Victor Scott as a defender. And yeah, part of it is his elite speed. He's faster than Siani. He's unbelievably fast. And that makes him really good in the field. I'm pulling up Victor Scott's numbers here, and they're definitely not as good. But he's also younger. He has less experience. Remember, Siani's 25, Scott's 23. Siani's been playing affiliated ball for a while now. Victor Scott is basically the fastest player in organized baseball, or right at the top of that. He has 80 grade speed. That's going to play. I think it's fair to assume that Victor Scott will be a good defender because he can close gaps that Siani can't. A catch that Siani may have to dive for, Victor Scott might just catch running. Now, Siani does get that bump from his elite reaction time, and he's one of the best route takers we've ever seen. But I think Scott will get there with more polish. Now, I'm not going to say Scott's going to win a Gold Glove. There's a lot of good defensive center fielders out there right now anyway. The Cubs have a guy, Pete Crow Armstrong, who is great in the field. But I think Victor Scott is going to be one of the stronger defensive center fielders. And the thing is, even if he isn't Michael Siani, if he's just well above average instead of elite to best I've ever seen, I'm not going to say Siani's best I've ever seen, but he is up there. He's incredible to watch in the field. Even if Scott doesn't get there, the bat is just already better than Siani's. And there's so much more room for growth. I think Michael Siani overperformed offensively this year. I think Scott underperformed. I think Scott's going to be a league average bat at some point with that kind of speed, that guy on the base pass. There's just more value there. So even if he doesn't get to Siani's level defensively, you have to be playing him. There's so much more projectability, and he's a guy that I think at the end of the day will be more valuable to your team. Okay. This question says, any thoughts on Chen-Wei Lin? Yes. We've talked about him a little bit on the Birds on the Farm podcast. So if you're not familiar, this is a great plug here. Kareem and I are now every other week recording a minor leagues podcast where we recap the system. We talk about important stuff going on. Last week, Kareem put out some Arizona Fall League predictions for who would get rostered down there. It's really, really good stuff. He is incredible. He does some of the best work on Twitter. Check him out at Kareem SSN. He GIFs minor league games. He posts breakdowns. He's also writing at Redbird Rants now, but seriously, Birds on the Farm, some of his finest work. Being on there with him, such a joy. I'm honestly just so lucky to get to do it. As for Chen-Wei Lin, there's already information about him out there. I'm not going to know this as well as Kareem. I'm just going to be completely honest. I don't want to butcher this, but he had a really, really good season. So let's talk about it. At the moment, he's 22 and he's pitching in the Florida State League, which is A-ball, Palm Beach, right? So it's low A. He's a little old for Palm Beach, but with pitchers, it's kind of weird. He had a great year. He started 22 games, 116 innings, racked up 123 strikeouts, which is very, very encouraging. A 2.79 ERA. It's something you really like to see from a guy like that, especially because last year in a preview at Palm Beach, he really, really struggled. He had a 7.71 ERA in just 11 innings pitched, 4 starts, didn't get through 3 in any of them. This year, he was giving him length. He was averaging over 5 innings a start. He was unbelievable. And so I think that's really important here. I'm excited about what he is for this system. I'm not going to pretend like he's one of the top arms in the system. He's one of the more interesting arms in the system, though, especially among these guys at lower levels. He could be legit. I think he could be a really, really good prospect. He's someone that you could easily see shoot up prospect boards. I think the Cardinals might be a little more aggressive with him. They've kind of handled him very, easily to this point. They haven't been aggressive with him. They've been cautious. I think next year you could see an assignment to high A or double A fairly early in the season. At that point, he's somebody that jumps onto the major league club's radar. And he's somebody that I think could eventually pitch in the big league rotation. He also has reliever appeal. He throws a really great fastball. There's a lot to love about him. Seriously, go check out Birds on the Farm. And if you want to hear more talk about that, comment on Birds on the Farm videos so we can take you in our mailbag section. Another plug there. The next question here says, I lean toward trading Helsley to maximize his value. What are your thoughts about trading JoJo Romero as well? He's got 2 years left, and even though 2023 was better than this year, he was still a good reliever. I'm also in the boat where I'm not looking to trade Burleson, but he's not a deal breaker if he can be packaged to get us a controllable pitcher like Bryce Miller. There's a ton in this question. I'm just going to break it down in order of what's been said here. So first off, trading Helsley to maximize his value, disagree that maximizes his value. I think trading Helsley at this deadline would have been much more valuable than trading Helsley this offseason. You're only getting one playoff chase. Reliever volatility is real, even among some of the best relievers in the game. Helsley was guaranteed to be healthy and effective when you got him this year. Second thing, I think you maybe could maximize his value better by starting him. Let Helsley start next year. He started in the system. He's got some of the best pure stuff in the Cardinals organization. He throws the best fastball. He is worth starting. Now, he's not going to throw 103 or 104 in the rotation. That's fine. He doesn't need to do that. He can tone it down to 98. Unlike Jordan Hicks, who got his shot at starting, Helsley's not exactly wild. He still has a higher walk rate, but it's not like Jordan Hicks, where he might just never find his stuff for the day. Helsley's consistent. He racks up strikeouts. He's got an incredible slider. It's probably the best slider in the entire system, majors or minors. You got to go with him. I would love to see him start. I hope they give him a shot in spring training. And right now, if you extended him, you could pay him reliever money and then start him. I think that would be way better value than trading him. As for trading Romero, I'm probably out on that kind of deal. Romero with the Cardinals, he's been good 3 seasons in a row with the Cardinals now. I kind of think of him like a Giovanni Gallegos a couple of years ago. Obviously, Gallegos this year, the wheels fell off. He's done. It happens with relievers. But Gallegos gave the Cardinals 5 good years in a row. Relievers don't do that all the time. Look at Carlos Martinez. Like, relievers are volatile. Sometimes they have their A game. They're unbelievable. And sometimes it's like, what is that guy doing on the mound? The Cardinals have lots of one-hit wonders. Seung-Hwan Oh was a one-hit wonder. Other guys like Tyler Lyons had nice stretches, right? But JoJo Romero has given you 3 years of fairly dependable relief pitching. Let him keep going. He's got 2 more years. Ride these years out. Be happy to pencil in somewhere around 60 innings and a 3.5 ERA at the worst next year. Obviously, it could be worse than that, but he's shown you that he's that good or better. Pencil that in. Be happy about that. I would definitely keep him. I also don't know what he gets you. He's not going to land the big bat you need. He's not going to land the big starter you need. Maybe you could get prospects for him, but you're not going to get a top 100 prospect for JoJo Romero over the offseason. You probably wouldn't even get that at the trade deadline, even if he's having a great year. Relievers just aren't that valuable. And I think JoJo Romero has more value with the Cardinals than he does with another team. As for Alec Burleson, yeah, I don't want to trade Burleson either. He was one of the Cardinals' most consistent hitters this year. And if they put him in positions to succeed, which basically means stop pinch hitting him and stop putting him in against lefties, he could be a really, really great platoon bat. Probably could have an 800 OPS or higher next year as a platoon bat. I love that kind of stuff. I love Alec Burleson. I believe he finished second on the team in homers this year, and he had a really cold finish. So if you want to project and think about what Burleson could have been had he stayed strong, had he had this kind of games played under his belt before, yeah, he could have been really solid this year. As much as I love Burleson, he doesn't get you Bryce Miller. Like, if you're talking about a pitcher Burleson could land you, I'm not sure who it could be. He's a roughly league average bat who's very limited defensively. I think that's how the rest of the league sees him. I think the Cardinals see more in him. I think they see him as a very strong platoon option who could turn into an offensive linchpin against righties. But I think they're higher on him than a lot of other teams around the league, and I'm just not sure what you get. I can't imagine that you would land Bryce Miller for a package centered on Burleson. Now, maybe Burleson is an additional piece that helps you go get that kind of arm, but he's not the center of that kind of package. So yeah, I wouldn't trade him. I wouldn't trade Burleson as a throw-in. If you're going to trade Burleson, it's because you get a Godfather offer where you really can't say no. Type of thing we were talking about with Ryan Helsley at the deadline this year. So yeah, I don't think they'll trade him, and I don't think he lands you that kind of arm. Okay, next up. Why wouldn't the Cardinals fire Ollie if they're rebuilding next year? Tough question here. We've talked about this ad nauseum, but I'll try to be quick and break this down here. Basically, look, Ollie already doesn't have the fans on his side, but the players love him. If you keep Ollie for a rebuilding season, Ollie gets to go out there and wear it. You know, that's really tough. Someone has to do it. If the Cardinals actually rebuild next year, they're going to get worse. They're not going to have a winning season unless by some Royals level miracle, everything goes right. I just can't see it happening. The young guys would have to really step up for them to have a winning year next year. If they're not going to add a big pitcher or a big bat over the offseason, they're probably not going to make that kind of splash addition. They could lose 90 to 95 games. That would make this officially the worst 3-year stretch in the last 50 years for the Cardinals, maybe longer. They're not going to make the playoffs next year if they decide to rebuild. It's just not going to happen. The National League's too strong. We saw it this year. The Padres, Mets, Diamondbacks, and Braves pulled away in the wild card race. The Brewers they own the division right now, and the Cardinals don't look positioned to claim it back next year. I just think that if you bring in an Albert Pujols or Yadier Molina, you don't want them to show up and immediately wear a 90-loss season. Fans here are capricious. They've shown that. They get very upset, and they love to blame managers. You don't want to put that guy in that position. You don't want their relationship with the organization to sour like before we retire their number, before they go into the Hall of Fame. Albert Pujols is an inner circle Hall of Famer. The Cardinals are retiring the number 5. You don't want him already fired when that happens. You want him in the dugout wearing number 5 during the ceremony. That's what you want if you're the Cardinals. I'm not saying they can't go with Pujols. Maybe he could make a big difference next year. Maybe he can mentor some of these guys. I just think if you're going to let someone wear it, let Ollie wear it. Ollie's shown you that he's willing to do it. He loves this team. He loves this organization. He wears his heart on his sleeve. Put him out there, and support him. Absolutely support him. I want this team to win. Ollie wants the Cardinals to win. I don't see the reason to fire him. Now, maybe he's gone by association. That kind of gets us into our next question here, right? So the next question says, do you think Bloom moves into the POBO role after the 2025 season? Like, maybe if Bloom moves in, Mo's out, Ollie's gone because he's Mo's guy. And that's how people see him kind of, unfortunately, he's tied to Mo and is gone. But yeah, I think that's a good reason not to fire Ollie. And if the Cardinals bring in some weird interim or someone else and they miss the boat on Pujols or Yadi or show them that they're not committed to going after them as managers, like that's so directionless. If they were to bring in some random old guy like Joe Girardi, I'd be upset, or if they were to bring in another another guy from the organization, people are just going to call it a puppet. At least Ali is stuck up in public before, at least he stands up for what he thinks is right. So yeah, I've said a lot. I'm a big Ali fan. I really hope they don't fire him. He grew on me a ton this year. I think he did a great job with what he had. So do you think Chaim Bloom will move into the POBO role? Maybe. I think there's a couple reasons he doesn't. Number one is if he's not the guy, but the news from the other day seems to suggest that he's going to be the guy, which is very good. And if you've seen Jeff Jones, he's dropping some tea leaves around here saying, hey, some guys are leaving these analytics departments. Maybe they're coming to St. Louis, especially guys leaving Boston. So that's definitely something that's good for the Cardinals. So I think he's the guy. So that's out. The other reason he wouldn't is because there's a chance that the Cardinals don't rehire a POBO. There's a chance they don't have another one of those solo command roles. Mozeliak had a lot of power. Mozeliak had the keys to do basically whatever he wanted in this organization for a good decade. Not everyone has a POBO. Not everyone has a Mo who drives the organization alone. Now, I'm not saying he's alone. I'm not saying he doesn't have guys in his ear. But he had all decision-making say. And not every team does that. There's a chance the Cardinals decide not to put Bloom in that role. Maybe he is just a GM. So, I think there's a chance that happens as well. There is a chance Mo sticks around too. So maybe Bloom is elevated into some GM role. I don't know. That wouldn't make sense to me. You wouldn't bring Bloom in if you weren't going to give him his flowers and let him drive. So I think they'll give him the keys. I don't know if he'll be the POBO, but I do think he'll get the keys and be the guy. So yeah, that's everything we've got here today. I hope I covered those things. I used the best of my knowledge here, so I hope I did it to your satisfaction. But again, this is Q&A number 9. We'll be doing these every week for the foreseeable future. We hope to do them over the off season as well. It's going to be a long off season. But hey, we're going to have all the news here at Dealing the Cards. So thank you so much for listening. We hope to see you again soon. And please, if you want a question answered, if there's something burning and you don't know who's going to tell you the answer, we will do our very best. So comment below on this video, like, share, subscribe, show your friends, have them get their questions answered. And we'll see you guys next time.